the second unit of financial statement analysis. We're going to cover the topic about annual reports. Now, annual reports are handy documents that companies release every year, specifically listed companies, publicly listed companies who have their stocks or equities listed on stock exchanges. They would come up and give these reports on an annual basis, which typically talk about the financial performance of the company. Our idea would be to try and derive as much information as possible from some of these documents and try and understand what exactly do these documents actually offer, and how does this information become useful for us when we are performing, let's say, a financial statement analysis activity, right? So broadly over the course of this unit, we're going to cover topics around introduction to annual reports, glancing through an annual report, major parts of an annual report, financial highlights. These are the major parts which we'll then look in detail. Financial highlights, management discussion and analysis, the financial statements of the company for the last 2 years, usually what is reported in the annual report, both on a standalone and consolidated basis. Finally, we will end up doing certain amount of exercises on annual reports and try and look at those exercises on annual reports and understand how does this become relevant for us in terms of both understanding the industry as well as understanding the company in more detail. So what essentially is an annual report? What is the definition of an annual report? As the name suggests, an annual report is a detailed, comprehensive report of the company's activities in the year, and it contains a variety of information for shareholders and also possibly other stakeholders, primarily around the financial performance of the company. Now, some of this information that is there is mandatory to be given, right? Why is it mandatory? Is because the law asks for it. You know, there is a rule that you have to give financial statements. There is a rule that you have to disclose what is the nature of shareholding of the company. There is a rule which you have to disclose, what are related party transactions as such within the company. We'll discuss all these as we go along. Some part of this is mandatory. Some part of this, however, is optional, and that depends on what the company wants to give, right? Now, that's an interesting point, because a good company should want to give as much information as possible, right? So more information means typically more transparency, right? And if there is more transparency, typically this is a good company with a good management, right? When we say a good company with a good management, we are saying that usually the more information you are giving, the less likely you are to hide any information. And if you are likely to hide information to a lesser extent, then the data that the company has given is more trustworthy. So essentially, the annual report, in a sense, starts giving you an idea about whether or not a company is revealing any information that is optional in nature. Some companies do it, some companies don't do it. The ones who do it typically are the ones who are more transparent and more information is available about those companies. So when you're doing financial statement analysis of these companies, it is typically easy to find information about these companies, right? How does that enhance eventual shareholder value is going to be a topic of discussion at a later point of time in probably some of the other subjects. But for now, what is important for us is to understand that the annual report gives a lot of information around the financials of the company. And the more information a company gives, the better placed an analyst is to actually go and make a good sense of the numbers of the company, right? So the bigger the information availability, the better your understanding of the company and the industry. The annual report sometimes can also give you information about the industry itself, right? So you can get an information about what is the industry working in. You can get an information about what a company does, right? So we may not know what all segments a company is in, but they have to disclose all this in the annual report. That what are all the works that they do, what segments do they work in. So essentially some of this information becomes important for us as well. And annual reports are good sources of information for this data as well. We will look at this as well as we go along to understand this in more detail and how does this help us.